Eden Koz here with Just Be, and we are about to take a spiritual boom. We are at an unprecedented time in human history where we are transitioning from 3D to 5D within the great spiritual awakening. This video and audio podcast is the place for you to find your truth beyond politics, your sovereignty, your voice. Let's kick up your vibration now. By the way, each episode ends with the Just Be practice to do just that. P.S. Just to know a little bit more about me, I'm a psychological empath, meditation master, dimensional healer, all the things to help you within this ascension. To learn more about me, visit me at edenjustbe.com. And let's get this party started. Okay. You know, I always like to get myself centered. Oh, feels different today. Oh, instead of jolting around. Eden here would just be spiritual. Boom. Oh, that was very calm. An association with the Grassroots Warrior Network. That was pretty calm too. My only reoccurring guest, and if I have this correct, this is the 8th time we've been doing this. Oh, there's some energy there. Love it. And this is episode 93, which gearing up to 100, which kind of blows my mind. Welcome back, Pia and Cullen, Interstellar Communicators, ending with additional words of enlightenment from their Pleiadian group connection, Laarkmaa. Say hello, you two, please.
Hello, you two, please.
Hello.
Hi, Eden and everyone.
Hello, everyone listening and participating.
In the spirit of levity, we're going to keep this light today with our conversation.
Well, I don't think we can quite say that, but thank you for that nod, because it's going to be pretty deep, as it always is. Today, speaking of, today we are recording on Halloween 2023, yet this will be published in 2 weeks. We are going to talk about the fascinating root of this holiday, talking about also false prophets, potentially fake news, who in history was ascended beyond Jesus and Buddha. And that will give a beautiful nod to Pia's new book, which will be out at the same time this podcast is published. And I will have a photo of that book for those who are watching as well. First, to state before I read Pia and Cullen's bio, Bashar, I just became familiar with him. I don't know if you guys are. So an ascended intergalactic who is challenged. So I want to give this nod to everybody who's watching and listening. He just did a broadcast that basically stated that the Earth is being protected in a sense from mass nuclear destruction by galactics. We are getting extra help. There may be some smaller nuclear issues that we have, yet in terms of the whole world being wiped out, he gave a nod that we're going to be okay. What do y'all? I haven't even given you your introduction yet, but yeah, let's go into that for a second. Do y'all agree with that, or what do you think?
Absolutely.
Eden, Laarkmaa's been telling the public that for years, that they will not interfere with human choice, but the one thing that they will do is prevent us from destroying the earth with a nuclear holocaust. They've been telling the public that for years. So I'm glad Bashar's team is now speaking up, because truth comes from many sources, but it's not an original idea, because the Pleiadians have been trying to get humans out of the fear state and to understand that reality for almost 2 decades.
They know that we make lots of mistakes as a species.
What?
And they assure us that the beings that are capable of keeping the finger off of a major nuclear bomb attack will be stopped no matter what. And they say that because they know that cosmic law, universal law, as Pia just stated, doesn't allow more evolved species to prevent things that would cause a civilization not to evolve as they would normally in their own process. So the only thing they can do is to keep us from blowing ourselves up.
We have recordings on our website of Laarkmaa's telling the world this and everything else they've been telling the world for 20 years. And we can attest that we have been in public gatherings where Laarkmaa has interrupted a presentation we were doing and said, "Excuse us, we will be back in a moment." And there's silence. I could say dead silence, but there's complete silence in the room. And about 30 seconds or a minute later, they're back and they say, "Excuse us, we had to remove someone's finger off the button and calm down their emotional state." So we know that it's already been done. That's been being done. I think the first time we had that happen to us was about 15 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah,
geez.
we were in a really large weekend symposium that was organized around Laarkmaa's wisdom. And I think the audience was shocked. Number one, they just stopped speaking after they said, "Excuse us." But then when they came back and explained it, I think people were amazed that that was even possible.
They were starting this out with such a good tone, such a message of hope before we get into more stuff, which is so awesome. And I also understand that if anything happened to the earth too, that would create havoc, if that's the best word to say, in other dimensions. So again, we are so connected with all that is. So if something goes wrong here, it influences everything. So that's another reason to keep us in check. Keep us in check.
That is a really important point, Eden.
Yeah.
Everything that happens everywhere is connected to the next energy, the next circumstance. Of course, if we did blow ourselves up, the ripple effect that would go out and out and out would be devastating to many, many other planetary systems. So by you bringing that up, I think that's really important for people to understand. Everything we do affects everything else.
Yeah. So the collective consciousness is just not here on Earth. It's everywhere. It's so big, it's so giant. Okay, let me read y'all's bio before we get into more. And I also wanted to say to everybody, please like this, subscribe. It's been really interesting. So I'm on these networks that are not supposed to be censored. So on BitChute the other day, I refreshed my screen. One of my videos dropped 70 views. On Rumble, I watched the same thing happen. I'm not worried about any of this stuff because it's really neat too, looking at the numbers. I don't even, what are the numbers? I'm assuming everything that we have is escalated beyond what you see, and it's being censored everywhere. So that's okay. We're just going to keep going. Okay. Husband and wife, PhDs, Pia, Orleane, and Cullen, Baird, Smith, communicators to the stars, writers, visionaries, intuitives. And I always love to say this because it's so grounding. Pia, being a former psychologist, and Cullen trained in anthropology and archaeology together. And it has to be both of them. They bring planetary wisdom from the stars from a group of Pleiadian light beings known as Laarkmaa. They have offered decades of beautiful work and commitment to the earth and humanity, and they just keep rocking and going on. Okay. Shall we start? We've already started. Let's move into Halloween. Tell us more about this this holiday.
Halloween was originally a Celtic holiday, and before we even get into that, I want to make a little analogy here for people to get, because we are so attached to the Gregorian system of everything stopping at midnight, starting the next day at 1 minute after midnight. That clock and calendar that has been foisted upon humanity for a long time was not the original way of measuring the passage of time. The Celts, in alignment with the Pleiadian Earth energy calendar, considered the start of the day at sunset of whatever day you were in. So Halloween, or October 31st, it varied year by year because they did it according to the full moon, not according to a date on the calendar. That's issue number one. Issue number two, it started with a cycle of recognition that we should celebrate our time of harvest is over and be grateful. And now we're moving into a period of quiet and darkness. And they believe that the veil got thinner between those who had crossed over, or interstellar beings or angels, or whatever things that are on the other side of the veil. They said the veil was thinner at that time of crossing over from end of harvest until moving into the time of darkness. they would gather together in groups and sing songs to the dead, because that was a way of connecting with, we understand that you're right there, the veil is thin and you're right there with us. But it was not something to scare people.
So originally, it was not a holiday arranged around candy.
Right.
It was an actual realistic celebration of life and death, because the idea of death was the same as the understanding of life. There wasn't a separation in ancient societies about death is a scary thing, death is a final process. These many societies and civilizations for thousands of years realized that life and death are the same thing. It's like two sides of the same coin. And their celebration was actually a happy time. It wasn't a sad time. I think the word celebration actually comes from this actual occurrence between life and death.
The name of the holiday, the Celtic name of the holiday was Samhain. It's spelled Samhain, because the Irish have a really funny way of spelling things according to our English familiarity, but it's pronounced Samhain. And that was the name of the celebration of crossing over from time of harvest until peaceful, quiet time of recognizing, connecting with the other side of the veil. So that was the original name of it. When the Christians took over and kicked the Celtic religion to the curb, Christians grabbed on to, we're going to celebrate on October 31st. Maybe that's the year, the date that they set up when they took over. I don't know. But they renamed it from Samhain to All Saints' Day and took the recognition and honoring of those who had crossed over, like Cullen just said, and all the other beings that we can communicate with. They turned it into a holiday that was to honor the religious saints. So it became a time of All Saints' Day. You should honor your saints and do what you're supposed to do.
It had nothing to do whatsoever with the original idea of why it was celebrated. It's really interesting. Go ahead.
The part I said about they would gather together and sing songs to the dead, I forgot to mention that when they did this, they dressed up in costume. And that's the origination of Halloween, bringing costumes. But they weren't scary. They were just costumes to sing to the dead, something fun to do, to celebrate the passing from one season to another. So those are the basic roots of what has become a very dark and scary holiday, if you want to call it a holiday.
Let's say spooky.
Yeah. Where candy has to be monitored to make sure that deviants don't put razor blades in it, and children have to be watched to make sure they're not snatched. It is not the same as it originally was intended.
Yeah.
Nobody on Halloween celebrates with gratitude all the gifts that they've had, nor do they celebrate with an open heart. We're connected to those of you who have crossed over and all the interstellar helpers.
However, do you want to add anything at this point?
Yes, I think this is a good lead in. I was talking to not a kid anymore. He's in his 20s, this autistic friend of mine, and I had to pick him up on, they were doing trick-or-treating in his neighborhood. And I said, hey, when you were a kid, did you trick-or-treat? And he's like, no, I've never. And again, it blows me away that special needs are so connected to all that is. And he said, even as a kid, it never felt good to me. It never felt light. It always has felt dark, which I was like, oh my gosh, look at you. All right. How was that for a lead in?
Well, that's perfect, actually. What I was going to bring up is some societies still today celebrate in a completely different way. If we use the Mexican culture in their understanding of life and death, they celebrate not just the passing of loved ones, but they celebrate the continued connection of the ones that are here and the ones that have gone. And the Day of the Dead, which is their celebration, which in some Mexican societies or cultures, because Mexico is very different from state to state and area to area, but they celebrate by building family altars. They spend days preparing. And I was amazed when I first started going to Mexico as an archaeological student way back in the 1960s. Sometimes I was there during the Day of the Dead celebrations, and I was amazed, having grown up in an American, regular, white bread, corporate society. I had no idea that other cultures celebrated not only death, but further communication with people who had moved on. And these altars, and I'm sure many of your listeners are familiar with this, many of these altars were incredible. I mean, they did spend days building them. Would put food, drink, toys, and especially beautiful floral arrangements. I mean, just incredible flowers. And I realized really quickly that that was so different than the way I grew up. In my growing up, children were not allowed to go to funerals. It was something for adults. We have to protect the children from death. So basically, children don't get to celebrate the moving on of a loved one. I mean, it was pretty definite in my circles. So Halloween, or the Day of the Dead, is really different from country to country, society to society, culture to culture. And I think we need to turn it back into a celebration. I think we need to turn it back into, let's communicate, let's honor, let's really do something that helps us realize that we don't really lose people. Things just change. They may not be here physically, but our love is still there. Our connection is still there. So Halloween in the West has really put a spin on what originally it was intended to be.
Do they do this in Mexico? I've seen videos, and I can't remember where this is, where they actually bring the dead body out and exhume it or whatever, and everyone connects with the dead remains. Did you witness that at all? I don't know. Again, I don't know if they do that in Mexico.
It is an occasional occurrence, but it's not a normal occurrence. There might be an effigy made out of wax, or an effigy clothed in the clothing that belonged to the deceased. But I think what you're speaking of is not widespread.
Could you imagine doing that in the West? Oh, we're gonna get their dead body, and everybody's gonna go around. Oh, I think people would. Woo! I think that would be challenging. Shall we move on? Thank you so much for explaining that. Shall we move on to false prophets?
Oh, one of my favorite subjects.
Okay, let's do it. All right, kick us off.
I just said there's lots of them out there. Go, your favorite subject.
Well, this is a huge subject. Every epoch, every era in human history, there have always been really wise people, really intelligent, heartfelt people who had something to share that hopefully was of a spiritual nature, that was of an uplifting nature. We could use Christ as an example of a real prophet. We could use Buddha as an example of a real prophet, Muhammad, Moses. There were many very evolved, very light-filled personages who helped teach humanity to get into gear, change a little bit about what you're doing, and do a better job. However, also in every epoch or every era, there have always been false prophets, people who wanted to become famous, people who wanted to become very controlling, who wanted to, in many cases, make a lot of money. And today, with mass communication as easily available to everybody in a way that's different than ever before in human history, AKA the internet, there have developed many, many false prophets, people who, as I said, want to be famous, want to be controlling, want to be important. And there is a huge amount of narcissism, or even beyond narcissism, megalomania, where people think that they know more than everybody else and that they want to influence people. And false prophets crop up everywhere, in religion, in cults, in spirituality circles. There are so many people that are talking about things that make people think that they're really, really wise.
One thing that they do, Eden, is they steal words from the vocabulary of the New Age. They know all the buzzwords: ascension, New Age, light, love, all the things about this is the way we're going, this is what we have to do, raise your vibration. They know all the catchphrases, and they weave that into whatever they're selling, whether they're selling attendance at their workshops, or whether they're selling a lecture, whether they're selling themselves, so I need you to pay attention to me. Whatever they're selling, they will weave these words into their own agenda. And one way you can really tell when it's a false prophet is oftentimes they will make the mistake of saying, mine's the only truth, or I know more than anybody else. And Cullen and I know from our own work that truth comes from many, many sources. We don't have the only piece of the truth. We happen to value the way our truth is given to us or shared with us from our galactic friends. But we also know that others have contacts, connections, and bring in truth from a different perspective. And that's good. That's what we're supposed to do. But false prophets will not try to unify people into seeing the real truth. They will try to separate further by saying, me, 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 join me, 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 me. Let's be separate in our group, which is causing more dysfunction in our cultures because it's not about unity, love, kindness, open heart, highest good for all. It's about greed, separation, narcissism, all the wrong things.
There's a really interesting way to detect a false prophet. It's really pretty simple. If what they're saying or what they're offering feels good in our hearts, if it really makes us feel calm, quiets us down, makes us feel as though this makes sense to me, I feel good, I like this. If we get that kind of a hit from someone speaking or lecturing, that's a pretty big connection. If we have a lot of questions, if we go, well, I'm not sure this makes sense to me, or this doesn't really make me feel good. Someone might even say, whenever I listen to this person, I get jittery, or I get antsy, or I even get angry. If people have those kind of reactions, it's a pretty good bet that the person that's speaking to them or to a group is really not telling the truth. And it's really interesting. Many people that Pia and I do call false prophets end up making millions of dollars, or they begin aberrant behavior where, in the control of their group, they start doing some pretty weird things. And if people catch on to that, they'll say, well, he or she must know more than I do. That's okay if he or she does that, because they're wiser than I am. They must know what they're doing. That is another ding, ding, ding. If someone that someone's following is doing things that are not moral, that are not just, that are not loving, it's really pretty easy to go, okay, I'm done with this. I'm changing the channel. I'm not going to do this anymore. But because so many people are so confused these days, and they're so hungry for guidance, they will follow someone if that person is charismatic and they sort of cover up the rough edges through their charisma, people get sucked in. And I don't really like the term sucked in, but I think it's accurate here. Mm-hmm. They get sucked into a slogan or an ideology or a program that basically really isn't good for anybody except the person who's perpetrating a lie or a way of becoming famous, powerful, and wealthy. So there are a tremendous amount of false prophets out there today. And unfortunately, the internet is making it much easier to do that.
One thing you can do to avoid that is simply be true to your own intuition. If something doesn't feel right, if your heart goes, skip a beat, something here is not right, listen to that, because we have more wisdom in our hearts than anybody else can ever give us through mental teachings. Laarkmaa, one of their favorite things that they say frequently out loud is, don't believe us, listen to your own heart. We're just sharing our perspective. We're not trying to convince you or tell you what's true. We're only sharing our perspective in order for you to open up and see a little more clearly the possibilities. But the truth is in your own heart. Listen to your hearts. And that's one of the things that Cullen and I value so much about this work that we do, because they are trying their best to empower people to wake up to what they have within them already and stop listening to everything in the external world that is not aligned with truth.
I'm going to call out two names just because they have been called out already, just to prove this point or validate it. So Bikram Yoga. So Bikram was, had all these yoga studios, had all these followers, and he did things with women that were not that great. And I had a yoga person on a while back, and apparently he's teaching in Canada, but I don't know if that's still continuing. And then one of the big ones, because I actually went to see him with my special needs daughter, John of God. He was a healer, and turns out he committed some of the most heinous crimes in South America in terms of getting young girls pregnant, trafficking their babies, and then killing the girls. I mean, and I sat in a room with him, with my special needs daughter. So I feel that there was some goodness there. We sat there 3 hours, and she was 10, and she sat on my lap in a fabulous meditation. Yet that was one of those occurrences that I was just shocked by, and then shocked by my own belief that it was good. And then going into my heart going, some of it was good. So in having to wrestle with some of that as well, like Cullen, you're wanting to say something. Tell me.
Eden, that is a really good point. Many of these people that Pia and I discuss as false prophets may start out as genuinely loving, having healing abilities, but once their ego gets wrapped around, oh, I'm famous, oh, I'm powerful, oh, I make a lot of money, something often happens in their personalities and they fall off the tracks. We could talk about this aspect for hours. There are many, many people who do start out with the intention of really helping, really connecting people with God or source or spirituality, whatever we want to call it. But something happens and they get so involved in themselves and how important they are that a switch happens. And I swear, I could list a laundry list of people right now. It's not worth our while to do that. But I will say that Pia and I knew some people who were following someone, and we knew from day one, this was several years ago, we knew from day one that this person was peddling junk. And we tried to tell our friends, we tried not to hurt their feelings or try not to sound like we knew more than anybody, but we said, look, you might want to be really careful here. And they said, oh, she is so loving, she is so spiritual, blah, blah, blah. Well, this person, who I'm not going to name, about a year ago was brought out into the public as one of the worst abusers one of the worst false prophets in this current era.
She was known and named publicly as the queen of suicide because she was encouraging people who followed her to kill themselves. That was made public.
That was only a small part.
But that's only a little bit of the depths that she was in. We can tell you handfuls of people that we've encountered over the years because we pick up the pieces when somebody goes through that. Oftentimes they will find us and feel a difference in the energy, and we pick up the pieces. I can tell you that we know a woman who mortgaged her entire house and farm because her guru told her she needed the money for the ministry, for what they were doing. Somebody else paid for her new car. Different people in the group were given different assignments of what they had to do based on the guru's knowledge of what they owned, so that the guru was sitting pretty and all these other people were going downhill and struggling. And they weren't seeing it because they were caught by the beauty of her words. She had all the right phrases. And that's what we are trying to tell people is don't listen to just what is said. Feel the energy. If it doesn't feel right in your heart, don't follow it.
We had a discussion with someone years ago about this, and we got into a pretty heated argument. The person speaking with us said, look, false prophets may be perfectly exactly what's needed for some people to fall into a trap so that they can grow by realizing that they made a mistake, or that they followed the wrong person, maybe for the right reasons, but it took them to a place they didn't want to be. So I would say, for fair play here, maybe false prophets are exactly one of the elements that is necessary in our culture, in our society, to help people grow, expand, and learn things. Personally, I don't want to believe that, but it's possible that they are an agent of education for some people.
There's one more little element of this, and this is to be addressed to all those people that are opening up and beginning to bring in new understandings, channeled messages, things that they've not done before, but all of a sudden their gifts are being awakened, and they're doing that, and they're hungry to get their gifts out into the world. So they will contact a magazine, a group, a famous channel, somebody else, and say, can I do this with you? Cullen and I asked if we could join somebody that we thought was making a difference in the world. And this is a very famous channel that we met. We know this person.
Several times.
Several times we met. The answer about whether we could do a joint channeling to bring forth truth was, how many seats can you sell? And we immediately said, that's not what this is about. And this person said, if you can't sell seats, we're not interested. So those who are just stepping into their gifts and wanting to share it and are aligning with other people, saying, let's do this together, it may not be about unity. Look through the cracks. If they ask you how many seats you can sell, how big is your email list, any of those questions, it's a tip-off. This person's not interested in sharing the truth. They're interested in making money.
It's been so interesting, and I've said this before, doing this podcast, because I tell people whenever they listen or watch to be very discerning of my guests, because there have been a couple of people that I've requested to be on the show, and when we're having our conversation, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what we're talking about. And I've put out there, which has been really, really wonderful. I think in the past couple months, that everybody that's been on the show is just wonderful. And I'm putting that out there too, for me, just to connect to brighter lights, to more truthful lights. So it's been a process for me in connecting with that and feeling that as well. When we go back to John of God, just a feeling that truth. And then also for me, if there's something that doesn't quite click, knowing how to redirect the questions or bring things out. It's just been a wonderful process. So I'm in terms of you guys talking about being discerning, really connecting with your heart when you come to people and really, really going deep inside and figuring out what works for you and what resonates for you.
Absolutely.
There is
Pia
another.
go ahead.
This that may need to be mentioned also, something that Cullen and I have found along our path as we stepped away from 2 professional careers into doing this work.
Mm-hmm.
Encountered a number of people who hold the belief system that if we're bringing forth anything spiritual, we should do all of it for free.
Mm-hmm.
He had a really in-depth conversation with somebody in Germany that we finally said, how do you make your living? And he said, I'm a pharmacist. And we said, aren't you doing a service for people? And they said, well, yes. And we said, do you make a salary for that? And he said, well, yes, I do. And we said, that's what we're doing. And we do so many things for free for so many people, but there is an element of fair exchange, and we're really big on fair exchange. If somebody helps us, we're going to find an exchange that works for them. If we're giving something out, we're asking people to do an exchange for us. And that's something you won't find with false prophets. They're not interested in fair exchange. They're interested in selling seats.
It's a one-way street.
It's a one-way street. So just be careful of that, and be careful of those who expect everything to be free also, because spiritual awareness is free for everybody. Listening to someone's perspective or having spiritual help as a guidepost is a service that can be a fair exchange. There's a difference.
Okay. And in this world right now, you have to have money to live or abundance, and being a spiritual person and showcasing your gifts, whatever you want to call it, is a beautiful thing. And you are worth receiving abundance too. Cause yeah, that is a really, a challenge within the spiritual community that I have to do this for free and I have to give it. No, you don't, because this is your heart. You don't give your heart, you give your heart, yet you receive things back. Oh, and speaking of that, Pia, why don't we go into your book? Is this a good segue too?
Segue for that.
Awesome.
So,
all right. Tell the title. Would you mind?
let me tell you a little bit about the book, and then I'll give you the title.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you more. So the book is about exactly what we're talking about now, revealing the truth. Because one of the greatest avenues of false prophecy has come out of the Christian church. It has been rewritten. What happened in the era of Christ and Mary has been rewritten so many times to align with the male patriarchy of control and getting people to do what they wanted them to do through manipulation. So the Christian church knows all the right words about service and generosity. They know all the right words, but they have set up a set of rules where you give to the church. Whether that's giving your soul, which they talk about, or giving monetary tithes that they talk about, or giving your time to go listen to somebody else tell you what's the truth. Doesn't matter what it is. The Christian church has absolutely warped the idea of spirituality that I believe Christ was here to teach. So in summer of 2022, I was outside watering the lawn, which I do for being in nature. And every time I did that, which is a lot because it's really hot in the summer here, every time I did that, this voice started speaking to me and telling me things, and I'd have to put down the hose, run inside, get paper and pencil, and start writing things down. I did that all summer long, and I shoved them in a drawer. And when summer was over and fall and winter came, I forgot about it.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
This is nothing new. Pia hears voices all the time.
That's true.
When I'm taking a shower, watering the lawn. I mean, this is kind of what this is, isn't it? And let me add this too while we're talking, just so everybody knows, I have had the pleasure of reading Pia's book, and possibly will do a recommendation for that. So I believe in what personally she is talking about. All right, go ahead. Watering the lawn, all these notes, putting them away.
Thank you, Eden. I appreciate that. And Cullen's right. I do and have all of my life heard many voices, but this was a new one. This was somebody that felt very familiar to me, but I had never heard from before. So I did all the writing on bits and pieces of paper. I've put it to bed for the winter. This summer, I was out in the yard watering the grass, and Mary Magdalene came through with a real strong voice saying, you've got 13 days to put that book together. 13 days. Start here, be finished by here. For 13 days, I did nothing but compile my notes, listen to the voice as she continued to speak to me. And Cullen took care of everything else for those 13 days. So that book, the title of it is Mary Magdalene's Daughter, the story of Sarah. And it's about Mary Magdalene and her husband Jesus, and about their family. Mother Mary, who the daughter Sarah calls Grandmother Mary, her brother Timaeus, who has never been mentioned anywhere that I'm aware of, and Sarah herself, who's never been mentioned anywhere that I'm aware of. But it's a very strong voice, and one of the key components of the book is that it mentions the connection of the wisdom that they are bringing, called the Way of Love, to the Pleiadian teachings that Cullen and I have been involved with for 20 years. The Way of Love is a Pleiadian path to ascension, higher consciousness, and raising your vibration to its highest potential. That's what the Way of Love is. That's what Christ and his wife, Mary Magdalene, were teaching. That's the way they raised their family. And the story goes through everything that Sarah experienced from the time that she was 12 years old and her father was crucified, all the way through her elder years, when she had her own children, her own family. It goes through telling the story of what her family's experience was, what it felt like to her, and what she was doing, and what her parents were doing at the time, the choices they made, the paths they took. It's an eye-opener for looking at Christianity in a different way, because Christianity is not in alignment with the Christian church. It is in modern culture, but it shouldn't be. It should be aligned with the Christ light that was within all of us and the path of the Way of Love. And that's what the book's about. So it's going to reveal a lot of Pleiadian teachings, the connections between Christ, Mary Magdalene, their family, and the Pleiadians, the stories of all the things that Sarah knows about ascension and duality and all the things that we talk about in a higher state of awareness. They're explained from her perspective, which, as you have read, is pretty interesting.
And I love, I guess love is the best. Oh, Way of Love, that there have been sacred documents that have been discovered that Jesus was married.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
this isn't completely, oh my gosh, it's so out of the box. No, there have been truths shown to that. So I believe what you're magnifying is that truth and showing more.
I think so too. And the book can be found on my website and people can order it easily. It's interesting because what you're saying about the truth has been revealed already. To me, it's very interesting that Mary Magdalene was raised from the whore that she was always categorized by the Christian church, because they didn't want anyone knowing that Christ was not celibate, that he was in a family situation in a loving, divine way. They didn't want that. That's part of the control of the Christian church, and they didn't want that known. And since those documents have been discovered, the Catholic Church has now said, oh, well, we're going to name her a saint and we're going to give her a feast day. And that's the Christian church, Catholic Church's way of saying, we're going to make the best out of this mess that's been revealed because we can't hide it anymore.
And let me ask you guys, when I was younger, and it's really interesting because your book was, you had told me it was a quick read, and it was indeed. It was very so captivating that it was easy to go through as well. And it's funny as we talk about that, knowing that I'm preparing a book and it's taken me 7 years, but yet part of that has been I started in one direction with this infection that I had. So talking about the physical and the spiritual part of it, then suddenly seeing the Great Awakening, and then seeing this book as, oh, my book's not so important anymore. This Great Awakening is so huge. And then bridging the gap between both of those. So it's been a huge experience. So imagining you doing this in 13 days is just amazing as well. So what was my point in this? Oh, my point was, when I was trying to discover religion when I was around 9 or 10 years old, and I started reading the Bible and being female, it was so hard because women were whores, were dirty. And I'm just reading this as a kid going, oh, something, it just, again, parts of it being false, just from my heart, I could not relate to it because it made me feel bad about me. I didn't like it.
Well, that's in connection with my other book, Sacred Retreat, which is all about how Christianity turned women's cycles into being something nasty and dirty and get away from. Indigenous tribes all over the planet honored the time of women's bleeding because it is only women that give birth. So women had bleeding to get rid of everything they needed to get rid of from the previous month. The lining of the uterus that did not make a child, the arguments they'd had with their husband or their community, their negative emotions, whatever they were purged once a month, and they did it together. And the whole community left the women alone to do their work. And the second part of their work was bringing forth new ideas, creativity, how are we going to move forward? Christian church didn't like this. They decided to burn women as witches for being aligned with nature, and to call the 13 cycles that women have as 13 is an unlucky evil number, and to brand women as you're dirty, you're less than, hide your cycles. Nobody should talk about this. It's not speakable. So all that's discussed in Sacred Retreat, but it's directly tied in with what you're talking about. And the key to both of those misinformation sources is the church.
What I like about this book is if people are willing to read this information, if they're willing to absorb the possibility that this is a better story than the altered story that Pia and you have just described, what I hope is that this will be an opening for people to fill in the blanks in the way that you just mentioned, Eden, about this didn't feel comfortable. I didn't believe what I was reading. This didn't make sense to me. My hope is the people that pick up this book and read it and maybe even tell a friend about it, I hope it will dispel so many myths, so many untruths that we have been trained to believe all of these 2 millennia of time between when these activities were taking place and all of intervening years where the rewriting, the restorying, the altering of the true facts never should have happened. So I'm hoping that this is really going to open a lot of eyes and hearts.
Thank you. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, Eden, or on your show, but I find it something that's a little light that fits in right here. When I was a child, my best friend's father was a minister, and I was raised in a Christian church. And she and I always had deep talks. And when I was 6, 7 years old, I was asking her father so many questions that he finally resigned from the church and said, this child knows.
Yes, you did talk about that. Okay.
Hey, this book is full circle from me for things that I knew at an intuitive level at 6 years old, and was asking questions about trying to awaken somebody in the church. And he wound up leaving the church, but I wasn't in a place for my voice to be heard then. I am in a place for my voice to be heard now. And I hope that it helps people to re-examine what they believe and find the truth in their own hearts.
Same with me. I'm going to parallel to my book for a second. It talks about God and source so much. And it's so funny coming from being a child where I felt like I didn't fit into any faith, to any religion, that suddenly I'm just like pontificating it with strength and just same thing, using my voice and feeling so comfortable with it and so good about it. It's so amazing how these cycles come. And it just makes me smile. And let me add in that too, God, source, Jesus, it's all about love. So when you connect to the heart, anything that's about judgment or you're not enough or any of that, that is not true at all. You are love, people. Aren't they?
Yes.
We have had so much what I call bad training. We have been told so many things that aren't true about us, particularly individually, as you just said, but about the whole world. There are so many things that we have swallowed that maybe made us uncomfortable, but we didn't know how to say no, or we didn't know how to say, I don't believe that.
Mhm.
And I think now is the time. I think in our evolution as a species, as a culture, now is the time for people to begin to reverse that bad training.
Now's the time to take out the garbage and say goodbye. Let it go. Can we, that's beautiful. Can we move into Laarkmaa, or is there anything else you guys want to state before we do more beautiful work?
Just to tell all of the listeners that we appreciate your interest in Eden's show and interest in listening to what we have to share. And we're all one. Laarkmaa teaches in the spirit of Lakesh, I am another yourself. And everybody out there is part of us, and we are part of them. We're all connected. And the more we can move into that space of being joined through love, the more peaceful our planet is going to be.
Y'all ready to connect? That was beautiful.
Just be practice.
Hello, dear ones. We are Laarkmaa, and we are here to support your evolutionary journey. Please give us your heart song.
Eden.
Eden, we are pleased to be with you and your listeners in this very special moment. We would like to tell you that what you are speaking of and the words you have encouraged your listeners to trust in is something that we see from our perspective as essential. You are, each and every one of you, divine sparks of light. You are beings of love. You have great concern at this time with what is my mission? How do I achieve it? Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing enough? These questions are in everybody's heart at this time of moving forward on the evolutionary journey. We would tell you that the essential mission that each of you has is simply to be love. The personal mission that each of you have may be discovered in personal sessions with us, but it also may be discovered through simply doing your own work of clearing your shadows, accepting who you are, listening to your heart, and deciding every moment to be a higher version of yourself. Your mission is to evolve. Your mission is not about taking care of someone else or being responsible for someone else or listening to rules that have been laid out by someone else or following a society that only sees a limited part of the true reality. None of this is part of your mission, especially now as ascension grows more close for each and every one of you. Your mission is to focus on keeping yourself in the highest vibratory state. Now, that does not mean that you cannot see the darkness around you or that you refuse to look at what is really there. It means that you see it, but do not judge it. You discern that there is another way, perhaps a better way that is more full of peace and kindness and harmony. And in that discernment, you make a choice to live your life in a parallel way than what you have been witnessing. It is in that parallel manner that you teach by example through the way you live your life and the choices that you make. Because you are all connected and we are connected to you as well, every thought you think, every choice you make, every word you speak, and the tone in which you speak it, all of these have a vibration. Notice if the vibrations you are using or expressing resonate with love and make you feel good, or if they resonate with power or fear or something that makes you feel separated and bad. Notice where what you are saying, thinking, or doing, where it comes from. Does it come from fear or does it come from love? Mary Magdalene's favorite 2 words that she speaks over and over again are fear not. And the reason she says this is because fear is the opposite of love. Each and every one of you is a divine spark of light. We've already said that, but we're saying it again because so often you are so immersed in your shadows that you cannot feel, or see the essence of who you truly are. When you work your way through the shadows, loving every aspect of who you are accepting your mistakes as a pathway of learning to do things differently, when you do not judge others, but discern whether they are resonant with you or not, when you live your life in kindness, you are indeed doing what Mary Magdalene says, fear not, for you are becoming a being of love. We leave you with these words of wisdom because we want you to find the truth of it in your own heart. As we always tell people, don't believe us. We're only sharing our perspective. Trust in your own heart, for that is where the truth will always be found. We love you. Good always.
My heart right now is so big, feels so shiny. So just expressing that to everybody, it's just coming across these airways. How are y'all doing?
Excellent.
We are always uplifted. When Laarkmaa comes through us, we are always uplifted, energized. We feel absolute love and compassion for everyone and everything when we're involved in speaking what Laarkmaa has to share with everyone else.
And you might have noticed that we started speaking completely in synchronicity. That's because we were so close to the moment when we were connected with Laarkmaa, because we feel everything that Laarkmaa says, and it comes through the words that are chosen because it comes to us both simultaneously. Laarkmaa uses what they call the libraries of our minds of both of us to choose their words in English to speak to people, which is why Cullen and I have to be touching to do this work. But I found it quite synchronistic that when you ask a question, we were still in that field and we answered synchronistically, automatically.
And I would encourage with that too, that when the time comes for y'all to do this Just Be practice at the end, and Laarkmaa is here, just to really, for everyone listening and watching, to just open your heart too, because you can connect to that feeling. Like when y'all were just doing that, my heart got bigger and bigger. It was so nice. So everybody today, thank you so much again for being with us, being part of this, because this is part of the ascension. This is part of the growth, and listening to our words, to our sharing this content. It's important, but it's not right now. Again, this parallel of everything, these inversions that are going on. And as always, I'm so grateful for the two of you and having you on the show. Like we've been doing this every 6 weeks. So thank you so much for being here and showing up and being a part of all this work. And I'm going to keep going for just a second. I'm so appreciative of the friendship between us that has grown. I am so grateful for everything today, for y'all, for everyone here with us, all of it. Okay. Whew, that felt good. In closing, is there anything, is it time just to say bye?
I think Laarkmaa pretty much explained it all.
Awesome. All right, y'all hang with me for a second. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. Heart, love to you. Bye. It's going to take me a second to find the ending now. Here we go. So cool of you to be here. I went from being off most social media to being on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or True Social, and you might be watching this on YouTube, Rumble, or BitChute. Or you might be listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. I'm on over 19 directories at this point. So connect, comment, subscribe, like. Oh, and my intention is to have a new episode out Wednesday of each week. Oh, Lordy, more to come.